You know where this Georgia Tech football program was. To come back and see where it is now, what kind of an impression has that left on you?
It definitely looks different from a roster standpoint. You can feel the difference in the culture change, the swagger the guys carry. Definitely different. You can feel it, you can see it. I'm really excited about that piece.
This is Jason Semore, and he has been hired to be the new Georgia Tech defensive coordinator. And today I will be attempting to answer a question of, what will Georgia Tech's defense look like in 2026? And I think to properly answer that, we must first answer another question. That question is, what went wrong for Georgia Tech's defense in 2025? As many of you know, the defense for Tech really struggled for the majority of the year and really faltered down the stretch. And this regression towards the end of the season contributed heavily to the Jackets finishing the year on a bad note. So, I tried my best to figure out the problem, and I think I've come to a reasonable conclusion. In my humble opinion, the reason for the defensive woes for the Jackets boiled down to a lack of focus. And no, I'm not talking about that in the sense of lack of attention. I'm referring to a lack of focus and a clear strategy and direction. When watching Tech's defense in 2025, I don't see a clear goal or theme that the defense was trying to achieve. Were they trying to be a solid, bend but don't break type of unit? Or were they trying to be aggressive and disrupt the offense? I'm not entirely sure. And I think this lack of direction stems from the fact that Blake Gideon, the previous defensive coordinator, was a first-time play caller and may have been a bit over his head for his first time as the head man for an entire side of the ball. And I don't want to speculate too much, but I think this is evident in the fact that he decided to return to his previous job as a position coach at the University of Texas. And this isn't me trying to slander him or anything, and I wish him the best of luck in the future. I just don't believe that it was his time to take that next step in his coaching career. Now, moving over to Jason Semore, he has a lot of good experience under his belt, including some time spent on the flats. After working as a defensive assistant in 2019 and 2020 at Tech, he became the linebackers coach in 2022 and was in charge of the best linebacker unit that I have seen at Tech in my 26 years of life. This unit included both Ace Ely and Charlie Thomas, who combined to be a dominant duo. And a bit of a side note, but Charlie Thomas might just be the most underrated Tech player that I've ever witnessed. He unfortunately played during a pretty rough era of Tech football, but I'm convinced there's an alternate timeline where he played on some good teams and would have like a Keith Brooking type of legacy. That's just me though. But going back to Coach Seymour, after being the linebackers coach in 2022, he became the defensive coordinator at the University of Marshall for 2 seasons and then coached the defense for Southern Miss in 2025. And when looking at his defenses, there is a very clear focus and theme, unlike Tech's defense in 2025. Let's listen in on this interview that he did with 680 The Fan to find out what that focus is.
25 type defense and really good at causing turnovers. What's the philosophy behind causing turnovers from a defensive perspective?
I think you have to be really calculated with what you want in terms of defining success in today's college football, in terms of production and affecting the game and helping the offense by creating more possessions.
If I had to use one word to describe a defense coached by Jason Semore, it would be aggressive. And this shows up on the tape and on the stat sheet. Last season, Southern Miss was number 1 in the nation in terms of interceptions with 23 total. Can you guess how many Tech had in 2025? The answer is 4. Clearly, there will be a much greater emphasis on the defensive players to make plays on the football. When it comes to technique, the biggest difference that I notice is that Tech's defensive backs would often keep their eyes on the receiver for the entire play, while the Southern Miss DBs would turn their heads toward the ball. The advantage of keeping your eyes on the receiver would be that the corners can keep up better. However, this strategy obviously limits the opportunities to pick off the quarterback. Aggression isn't limited to just the coverage though, as Southern Miss was also pretty good when it came to sacking the quarterback, getting home 29 times in 2025. And another interesting bit from that interview we just listened to is that Coach Seymour mentioned wanting his defense to complement the offense. As we previously discussed last week, Tech is likely going to lean even more into being a run-heavy, ball control style of offense. Well, when you have an opportunistic defense that is looking to steal possessions away from the other team, you're giving the offense even more time of possession and more time to wear down the opposing defense. Now, this aggressive strategy is a double-edged sword, as Jason's defenses have had a tendency to give up a lot of yards. However, when you're creating a bunch of turnovers, a lot of that yardage ends up being empty. When looking at the bigger picture, the styles of play you will see Tech instill on both sides of the ball are going to synergize with each other very well if everything goes as planned. And last but not least, let's look at the personnel that Tech will be trotting out on defense in 2026. And I believe that the most interesting unit is the defensive ends. Tech returns veterans Braden Manley, Amontre Bradford, Andre Fuller, and Jordan Boyd at this spot. And all of these guys got experience in playing time in 2025 and will be looking to build on that this upcoming season. On top of that, Tech also brings in Jordan Walker, Tajay McCoy, and Noah Carter as transfers. Walker and McCoy are both experienced veterans who come from Rutgers and Oklahoma State, respectively. I would anticipate that they will be supporting players who may not end up being All-Americans, but will contribute solidly to the pass rush and give Tech even more veteran options at the edge position. Noah Carter, on the other hand, is the up-and-comer. Coming out of high school, he was a top 100 player in his class and spent 2 seasons at Alabama before coming over to Tech. The nice thing about Carter is he's a very young player and will only be a redshirt sophomore this season. If he still needs more time to develop before getting a ton of snaps, there are plenty of veterans in that room with him that can handle the load this season. But if he ends up having a great offseason and really shows out, that just adds another capable pass rusher to this unit. Overall, I'm not sure that any of these guys will be a double-digit sack, All-American type of player, but I believe that we are very deep with capable guys and will be able to keep fresh legs out on the field all game. Moving over to defensive tackle, this is a unit that is a little bit more of a mystery. Tech lost their top 4 guys from last season in Jordan Vandenberg, Kilo Stone, Matthew Alexander, and Jason Semore to graduation. Tech brings in Tawfiq Thomas, Vincent Carroll Jackson, and Tim Griffin from the transfer portal, and a young returning player to watch is Christian Garrett. Garrett was a true freshman last season who was very highly recruited, and he spent time at both defensive end and defensive tackle last season. With the amount of depth that Tech has at edge, I would personally anticipate that he plays more on the inside this season, but I could be wrong. Moving over to linebacker, this is a unit that really confused me last season. They carried the weight of the majority of the criticism on Tech's defense last season. However, I don't believe that this is a personnel issue. When you look at the guys in that room, Kyle Eford, EJ Lightsey, Cayman Spalding, Melvin Jordan, and Tajay Butler, all of these guys are very capable and good players in my opinion. I have no idea how we had this amount of talent in the room, yet we weren't able to put it all together. The good news for Tech is all of these guys, except for Tajay Butler, are back for 2026, and Coach Seymour is a linebackers guy, as previously mentioned earlier in this video. I think a lot of Tech's defensive success this upcoming year hinges on guys like Kyle Eford to play up to what they are capable of. I know these guys are good players, I know it, and I am excited to see what a change in scheme may allow them to accomplish in 2026. Finally, at defensive back, we will start with the corners. Tech returns veterans Kelvin Hill, Daquan White, and Zach Toby, who all contributed and even started some games last season. Tech also adds Jonas Declano to the unit as well, and as of now, I would anticipate that he will be the number one corner on the team, replacing longtime starter Amari Harvey at that spot. Another interesting guy to note is Jalen Mbakwe coming in from Alabama. Now, his situation is that he is a two-way player, doubling as a wide receiver on top of being a defensive back. And I do think he will play on both sides of the ball, as he is the only player that will wear number 3 this season, when usually numbers are shared between players on opposite sides of the ball. If I had to speculate, I feel like if he does in fact play on both sides of the ball, he would primarily play on defense while having some packages installed for him on offense, as I believe that playing defense requires more knowledge of the team's overall game plan in contrast to playing on offense, where you can just focus more on the plays that you are a part of. Finally, we get to the safeties, and as of now, this may end up being a thin unit for the Jackets, but there is a lot of potential amongst the guys that we have. Savion Riley and Phoenix Felton both returned to the team from last season and showed some good flashes in 2025 despite limited playing time. Someone you should really get familiar with, though, is Tay Harris. Harris was a big time recruit in Tech's 2025 recruiting class, and he is poised to have a huge year this upcoming fall. He looked really good when he was out on the field last season, and if you ever take the time to watch an interview of his, he has a ton of self-confidence. I believe that he is the biggest X factor for the Jackets right now, and there is a real chance, in my opinion, for him to be the best overall player on the team. And no, I don't mean just the defense. I'm talking about the entire team. This is the second installment of a 3-part series that I've been working on, and now that we have covered both the offense and the defense for the Jackets in 2026, next time we will be putting it all together and taking a look at the bigger picture. If you would like to catch that, I humbly ask that you subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you for watching. Go Jackets! To hell with Georgia! Deuces.